Let's go now to our friend Beimnet Abebe from Galaxy Trading. As always, Beimnet, welcome to Galaxy Brains.
Thanks for having me.
Well, a material uplift in Bitcoin price this week. We rushed up to 66, then we came back down a little bit. Almost, it was the Dalai Lama pattern, if people are familiar with that, earlier in the week. But now Bitcoin trading strong, just south of the 68K level. Big inflows into the ETFs. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it's predominantly driven by election odds for Trump continuing to creep higher. I think Polymarket has gotten as high as 60%, as of today, which is Wednesday. And so, I think in terms of the election trades that folks are looking at, crypto is expected to be a huge beneficiary of a change in administration. And so, folks are basically doing the calculation of what are Trump's odds? Where does Bitcoin go to if Trump wins? Let's say that's fresh all-time highs, 90K. And where does Bitcoin go to in a Kamala administration? Let's say that's south of 60K. Let's call it 55K, right? Your midpoint is north of 70K, just on a 50-50 distribution of outcomes. And so when you start to price in a 60-40 of that, 90-55 spread, it creeps a lot higher. And so, what you've seen happen, I think, over the past couple of days is the election is kind of the only thing that matters. And as you get closer to the election, I think Bitcoin's basically going to be at that expected value point. And as that expected value of the Trump administration has continued to creep higher, Bitcoin has continued to creep higher. And I think there's a lot of folks that have yet to allocate to crypto and Bitcoin in a meaningful way. And if they're thinking about the election, like once the election outcome is known, like the price might just gap up. So you might not have an opportunity to really participate in the Bitcoin upside if you don't have it on already. And so I do think that there's a little bit of that FOMO happening in the market. In conjunction with that, you've had an incredibly positive, broader risk backdrop. We've had some de-escalation in the geopolitical tensions. You still have, the S&P and NASDAQ trading well, although you did have a little bit of a hit yesterday, but you're still basically only a percent off all-time highs in the S&P. So it's a very good risk environment. You still have, the precious metal backdrop, continuing to do well. Silver is, on the cusp of a pretty big breakout. Gold's trading incredibly well. You've got softening inflation across the world, Europe, in the UK, Canada, Australia. Like there's a ton of places where the inflationary story is calming down, and growth concerns are starting to become more prominent. And so that generally leads to a shift towards more monetary easing, and that's what you're seeing reflected broadly in risk appetite. And that's all helping Bitcoin trade pretty well at the moment.
Yeah, what's interesting is if you think about the prior all-time high from 2021 being 69,000 or around there, that would be about $80,000 in today 2024 dollars. If we follow CPI as the measure. So we really didn't sort of make an all-time high in that sense yet, which actually helps me sort of my mental model of where we are in a supposed cycle make a lot more sense to me, right? We're more in like fall 2020 than say, coming off an all-time high, trying to make another higher high. In my mind, I think people still are sort of anchored to that 2020 dollar before all this inflation happened. Do people,
I think that's a very valid point.
Yeah. Do people think about that, by the way? I mean, in say traditional markets, I mean, it seems like a really important point. Like when we say, I saw,
No.
yeah.
I think it's an incredibly important point. I do think it's one that is underappreciated by the market, and so I think that's entirely valid. The other thing I would also cite is you've had a ton of supply overhang that's been absorbed by the market, whether it's GBTC outflows that happened, whether it was Mt. Gox flows, whether it was German government selling, whether it was U.S. government selling, Chinese government selling, and folks looking to take profit at all-time highs, and through 65K. So there's been a ton of sell pressure that's already been absorbed by the market. And in theory, it should be a transition from weak hands to stronger hands, and that's effectively what's happened in Bitcoin over time. And so I do think you've just got such a clean setup here, especially on a Trump victory, where you will see Bitcoin break to all-time highs, inflation adjusted.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's just a super salient point, and I think thinking through the election, like, there's going to be some inflation that comes out of either administration. I
Yeah.
would say, they're both very inflationary policies. Trump, primarily because if you're going to slap tariffs on everyone, and you're talking about super high tariffs, that's inflationary. You're talking about deporting millions of folks that are in our labor force. That's inflationary to the labor market. And you're talking about tax relief and reducing taxes on tip earners and folks that have auto debt and etc. And then on the Kamala side as well, even though they're trying to raise taxes to offset some of the spending policies, but generally speaking, like, both of these administrations are going to spend a lot of money, and they're going to drive like inflationary policy. And so that monetary debasement thesis, I think, holds true for either party, and that should bode well for store of value like Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And then your thoughts here. I've been saying that we've got Bitcoin dominance at cycle highs like 58%, which is kind of a silly metric. You should probably take stables out of that or other weird long tail assets. It's sort of fundamentally higher than that. It's not the highest it's ever been. But the question is, or you take ETH BTC, which is also like painting like near multi-year lows, right?
Good call, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. I've been a long time short on ETH BTC, but I think I've been thinking about this a lot more, and I think it's pretty clear to me that a Trump administration, assuming it comes with a material easing of the crypto regulatory frameworks for cryptos broadly, it should support altcoins sort of in an outsized way when compared to Bitcoin, which itself has very little sort of business before the regulators. Like, I'm sort of predicting that ETH BTC bottoms and Bitcoin dominance tops in the event of a Trump victory. What are your thoughts on that take?
Yeah, no, I think initially you're spot on, because the deregulation, sort of tailwinds should support up the other assets. But I think over time, crypto investors have gotten a lot smarter about where they allocate their capital and kind of the flows that are associated with a lot of these alt tokens, particularly in the context of just the sheer amount of supply that unlocks on any given day, and kind of some of the venture based strategies that are out there. And so, while I do think that Trump victory should help a lot of these tokens, particularly ones that are likely might actually have a real chance at getting an ETF product. While I think that is true, I think the underpinnings of kind of what those tokens are about and the supply dynamics, I don't necessarily know how much it extends.
Yep. Yeah.
It's sort of my concern. But high level, I think crypto historically has always traded on the back of Bitcoin. And so, if Bitcoin trades really well, I think risk appetite will come back into the market, and folks will want to speculate on meme tokens and other long tail kind of stuff. And so, when that burst of risk appetite comes through the market, if on the off chance Bitcoin breaks all time highs, I do think that those other assets will outperform, simply as a function of like a dollar of buying an alt token will move it a higher percentage than buying like a dollar of Bitcoin. And so you'll see just a pickup in market cap across a bunch of alts. And so I do tend to agree with you that risk reward on like ETH BTC or Bitcoin dominance, favors the other direction
Yeah.
at the moment.
Yeah.
Particularly if you think Trump is most likely to win.
Well, it's getting exciting. I think we're just under 3 weeks away from the election. And I just it's an important one. It's definitely crypto's most important election. By the way, not just at the presidential, but also in the House and Senate. Enormous amounts of money and lobbying being done on both sides. And we'll be here to tell you about it. Beimnet Abebe, my friend from Galaxy Trading, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.